All right, we're recording, just taking care of the kitty. All right, there we go. Hey,
right.
How are you doing?
Good morning.
Got my green tea, with everything in it.
Everything?
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to the Jon and Tara podcast. Please like and subscribe.
Hey, you got that out of the way right away.
Yes, I want to make sure I got that done.
We're not sponsored by this green tea.
Mine's green jasmine tea.
Mine's the one with the ginkgo and all the different things in it.
Did you know that jasmine green tea is scented?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, they sent it on purpose?
Yeah, like it sounds like they kind of, I should know this before I actually try to talk, but it sounds to me, it's kind of, it's not smoked, but it sounds like it's put, it's like not the actual jasmine flowers.
You could have told me anything and I would have been like, oh, wow, that's pretty neat. I wouldn't have known.
So she's in her bed.
Yep.
We got a new little kitty and she's doing great.
Kitty.
Yeah, tiny. And she's, the bed is this big. And
I did the kitty talk on video.
Did you?
A widow bitty kitty.
Oh, widow bitty kitty. Yeah, she's like a sixth of the bed size, but she's chilling.
My work just turned on, so I'm gonna turn that off again.
Obviously, you start work at 9 a.m.
Well, that's when I don't mind getting calls and emails and stuff like that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's tell the little bitty kitty story, because I've told it a couple times. There's a shorter version, there's a longer version.
Okay, Jon and Tara podcast, itty bitty kitty story.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Tara had a cat and passed away about 6 months ago, and she's buried in the backyard. And so
she's been on some of these videos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, yeah.
After an appropriate time without another cat, we were getting some ear medicine for our other kitty, Maggie, and we were at the vet, and there was a cage of kittens. And whenever there's a cage of kittens, everybody gathers around and walks over and doing all the little kitty stuff, right?
Yeah.
And the kitties are like meow meow. They're all excited to see people because they want to play and
want to get out.
So we walked in and your aunt was in there and she was holding a little kitten. So you went over and kind of scratched and played with that. And then you guys were talking, and I was looking at the kittens because I was staying away from them. Because I didn't want to promote a kitty, and I watched the kittens, and there was one little kitten was staring at you and watching you go back and forth, and she was sitting there quiet. These are little kitty paws. She was just sitting there quiet watching you, and you would talk to your aunt and your hands were moving, and she would watch your hands, and then she would watch you, and you kept moving around. Mm-hmm. And then your aunt got up and walked over to you, and then I don't remember if you held the kitty she was hanging on to.
No.
But you guys were talking, and this one little kitten just kept watching you. And I thought to myself, well, I think that's Tara's new kitten. So I picked her up and put her in your arms, and you said, oh, you know what you're doing? And I'm like, yeah, well, let's see, and she just sat calmly in your arms and
just totally chill,
enjoyed being there, and that was it.
Yeah.
And the next day we came in, we told them to put her on reserve, and we came in and picked her up. And
so we were going out for a walk anyways. It was that afternoon, you're like, oh, I think we should get more of that ear medicine for Maggie. It looks like we're running out. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, the vet's closing pretty soon. You should go soon. And I had a class scheduled. Mm-hmm. And so just within a few minutes, the class was canceled. And I was like, hey, this is a good opportunity. Yeah. I said, let's go for a walk down by the river, which the vet is right by the river, mm-hmm. but that's also where we got married, that park. And so I said, let's go for a walk. Let's visit our tree. So it was already going to be a very special evening.
There's a tree that is grown together at the bottom, and it has two trunks, two huge, ginormous trunks that go up like this. And it looks like two people standing there. And married right in front of that tree.
We should look at the video and pictures to see how small those trees were then,
Yeah.
23 years ago.
23.
Yeah. So we were already planning on doing that. So the vet was closing within a few minutes. So we're like, well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, I knew you needed some talking time.
There was no time to do any of the paperwork or payment or anything like that. We needed to make sure she's checked up and all that. Yeah.
So there's a few more details, but that's kind of the gist. And
right down there.
Yeah, just chilling.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we had talked about whether to get another animal previously, and you had said that you weren't sleeping well due to our current kitty who's older and will every once in a while just yowl and meow and is kind of unsettled at night. And we already had a cat that was very active at night as she got older because she had hyperthyroid. So that was a really big consideration. So on the walk, you know, I knew that I had already kind of been like, well, previously, like we may or may not be getting another animal. And so I was very pleasantly surprised when you were like, okay, we can get her.
Yeah, it was about time. Can you grab me a tablecloth there so I can not ching my glass on the table every time I put it down?
So what was it for you? Because, you know, I hadn't pressured you about getting an animal because knowing that,
you want me to give out secrets to ladies on how to get an animal?
Or either way, but because I was trying to be considerate of you, you know, and that sleep obviously is vitally important.
This is Kittenomics on the Jon and Tara podcast. You were patient. You had talked about a dog. We've talked about a dog for a while. We both love dogs. We both love cats. You know, you work from the home. And so cats are more ideal than dogs in the sense that we can leave them alone. We can let them be, and they've got their box and they've got their food and they'll graze, you know, you could leave out food, you know, and that kind of stuff. And my parents live next door, so it's easy if we want to go on a trip, you know, they can watch them and we can go do our stuff. And so I don't know. And then we were both talking about Maggie, our other cat, potentially needing a housemate, you know, or that it would be good for her. And we'll see yet. It's been
2 weeks. 2 weeks tomorrow.
No, really?
Yeah.
Holy cats.
Yeah.
14 days in this family? What's going on?
She adjusted really well.
Yeah.
Well, and Maggie is not like super excited yet, but she kind of seems, the hissing has stopped. That was only a couple days. But she kind of seems a little bit entertained. Like she'll watch her and then kind of do her own like circling around.
Yeah.
But I think that's something, you know, as in life, I mean, we've certainly heard of cases in couples where like partner is definitely not considerate of the other, you know, like it's like just bringing home animals and maybe spending too much money, or I mean, there's
overdoing constantly.
Yeah, there could be so many different ways, or maybe initiating a get together or something, or inviting over people maybe that the other spouse doesn't care for so much. And I think it's really important, you know, considering each other, that, you know, and then there's got to be a happy medium, because I think you can go too far the other way too, and you get, you know, because I was kind of thinking to myself, gosh, we've always had animals in our life, and there's just something about, you know, that little critter walking around or romping or something, and you have that interaction with them, and I think it really, I think it brightens an atmosphere in most cases.
Well, it's a distraction. I mean, I've been in homes where people are arguing, but they argue through the animal. And so the dog is talking. So they'll be like, well, Buffy, what do you think of that? Well, I don't know, Jim. I'm not happy about that. You know, and they'll be like, they'll use the dog or the cat to communicate. And we don't do that, but I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
You know, your cat doesn't like that. Your dog doesn't. Your dog thinks you should do the dishes. You know?
Like,
It's
no, my dog thinks I should be sitting watching TV. It wants me to hang out.
or going outside or getting treats or whatever the dog wants. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of funny. Well, that's kind of you're kind of asking about how to strategize in relationship, and I'm about us, you know, being good together, being happy, and being, you know, there's a lot of purpose driven talk these days on um, what a marriage is for, what a relationship is for. And, you know, personally, I think a relationship is for whatever you need it for, you know, whatever both people agree on. And a marriage is a standard in a society or a community on how a couple can exist together, can build something together, can hopefully grow together, and then can radiate that outwardly into their community, their environment first, and then their community and that type of thing. And so, um, you know, you've talked about wanting an animal. You know, you weren't 100% specific. You know, I know you didn't want a parrot, and I know you didn't want a goldfish, but
Right.
or a hamster, but you know, I knew that a kitty would be ideal because that's what we've had is cats, and a dog is a huge, you know, a dog to me is more like a kid. Everybody says they're fur babies, but cats are not like kids. Dogs are not like kids, but dogs are more like kids than cats are like kids because cats are very self-sufficient. I saw a meme the other day and it said, it said, dogs care about what you say and they're trying to understand all the time. Cats know exactly what you're saying and they don't give a crap. Which sometimes the cats will lead on that they knew exactly what you said because they respond to it exactly the way it should be responded to. And then other times, like 90% of the time, they're aloof and they're just like, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm over here doing this. Or you'll throw a toy and they'll be like, didn't want to play with that. And they go the other way, you know, not my favorite toy, not paying attention to me, are you?
Yeah.
You know, so.
It's not 9:16 yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thought process. And it takes, to me, it takes the right animal. It's not just about, you know,
Getting an animal.
going to the highest end breeder and going to the pound and rescuing. You know, it's sometimes you're at a farm and, you know, a little kitten comes up to you and they're like, you want one? we got a lot of them. And you're like, absolutely, you know, and
Yeah.
that animal presents itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good, you know, it's kind of like the difference between meeting somebody in person and meeting somebody on a dating app. Now, neither you or I have used dating apps. At least I haven't.
No.
Neither one of us have used dating apps. They didn't exist. Well, I think there was online dating before we got together. I think there was.
Maybe it would have been so new.
Yeah, I think there was a Christian site, and there probably was a satanic site. That's the two
Yeah.
that are out there.
Right.
The Christian mingle and the mingle and dingle. But the idea is that when you meet somebody in person, you get the feeling, right? You get the vibe. You can see, do they make eye contact? Do they not? You know, are they just making eye contact with other things? You know, or whatever it is, right? But if you're on a dating app, you're looking mostly at the physical, probably the age, probably the maybe if they say they're into skiing, hiking, whatever, and you're
Do
like,
they get along with other cats? Well, you can find animals online these
no, I'm
days
talking
too.
people.
I know, but I was
You're being
making
funny. Okay.
trying, hoping you were roll with it.
Yeah. Do they get along with other dogs, cats, or do they have a dog or a cat, and then, then that they're an animal person or whatever it is. So I like the in person. I don't like going to the pound or going to going somewhere where there's a lot of animals and just picking one out, even though we've done that.
We did that, and then but there's still an element of the animal picking you too, and we've had that.
Yeah.
And then
Well, your cat picked you,
Yep.
and Cleo took my hat off,
Mhm.
and they were in cages. Our previous animals, they were in cages. The cages were stacked almost up to as tall as me, maybe one taller than me, so they could get on a step stool and get them out. And your cat was very attentive to you. I forget what she did, but
She hugged me.
you took her out.
Yeah, I took her out of the cage just to kind of just see if she's a one, and she just nuzzled in and hugged me.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
And then my cat reached out of the cage. I was wearing a hat and a baseball cap, and she swiped it off of my head. And I was like, didn't even notice her until that. So, and then we brought her home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other one, Maggie, I found online, but we went to visit, and she definitely picked you out as well.
Yeah.
So we've done both, but I think that, so I've been listening to this book, and this guy has been all over YouTube. Apparently, he's been on a number of mainstream shows as well. James Sexton, he's a divorce attorney.
Oh yeah, I sent you a video with him the other day.
Yeah, and I've been listening to his first book, which is if you're in my office, it's too late, but it's a divorce attorney's, insights or advice on love and marriage. And there are some interesting points, and he, at the very beginning, of course, he's an attorney, so he makes a very interesting argument of why a divorce attorney would know. People might ask, what would a divorce attorney know about love and relationships? And he's like, well, the divorce attorney hears, what your your psychologist or therapist will hear, your CPA, everyone that's involved in your life, that typically the attorney is going to hear all of it.
Yeah.
And, obviously his perspective is from those marriages that have failed. So, there's a bit of reverse engineering, but, or kind of flipping the script, so to speak. And where was I go? Oh, so this is related, but kind of tangentially, he was talking about a couple's sex life, and how he was giving the account of a couple, like, usually it's very lopsided. Usually the guy wants more sex. Yeah, and or differently, or just more frequently, or more exciting, kind of interaction, and the other person maybe not so much. Or, of course, things change in life, especially, for example, when kids come along, and maybe the woman sees herself differently, as a mom, not necessarily that sex kitten, she was before, or or they're just busier, right? And he tells the story of this couple who basically scheduled themselves into sex. So, through good intentions, to make sure that that they were both being.
Would you like to make an appointment right now?
To make sure that they're
be funny.
Both getting what they want. Is that what you're?
I was trying to be funny, yeah.
And but what they ended up doing is, it was Saturdays at 9 and Thursdays at 3 or something, and it became monotonous. And so, it sounds like maybe a more rare situation, that they're still getting the physical intimacy, but it was no longer intimate because it was not spontaneous. There wasn't something, there wasn't that component. And that's, you'll hear, for example, Jordan Peterson talks a lot about the concept of order and chaos, right? And we need both. I mean, it's strange, and that we need both, but I think we have different personalities, in that a person may do better with some more chaos, and the other person is trying to maintain order, and it may flip flop too, depending on uh like one might like an orderly house, and the other one doesn't care so much, and one may want more orderly finances, and the other one's like doesn't get worked up about that. Maybe they're more yeah. So kind of to go back to a bit what I brought up before, we've observed some couples, they may one may be a little bit more chaotic, or a lot more chaotic than the other person. And from the outside, it can seem like, holy cow, how can that other person put up with that? Like, she just brought home another stray dog, but I think typically in a relationship, you're going to pick a person that you can kind of, you balance each other out, right?
Well,
and
you
that
don't.
person might actually, because in a relationship you need a certain amount of chaos. Just real quick, so like even bringing a kitten in to our household, we have an older cat as well, we have our routines and so forth, and it was just the right amount of chaos. There's only a couple nights that, at least I don't know about you, but I didn't sleep very well, but it's it's tolerable, it's something you could put up with. And but what can happen, and you see this in longer term relationships, is that you start getting into your routines and preferences so much. It's like that couple that's scheduling in sex. It's like, okay, yeah, you checked that box, but it wasn't really fulfilling. And that's what I appreciated about you. And genuinely, I wouldn't have gotten an animal or pushed for an animal if it really would have jeopardized, if you felt it was jeopardizing your sleep and therefore health. But I appreciate it at the same time, because we need, sometimes we need that outside kind of stimulus to shake things up a bit.
I wrote down chaos. You don't know a lot of things. We've been married for 23 years, and you don't know what your partner is going to be like in 23 years, right? You don't know what they're going to be like at 10 years. Lots of people, I've heard even close to 70% of marriages don't make it. I mean, they say, like 80% of relationships don't make it, but I don't think you can count people that just started dating, because that's the whole purpose to a relationship,
Right.
is testing the waters, being around somebody, like courting, right? I mean, I'm sure back in the day when you went courting and you had to have an aunt with you, or somebody like that, there was a pretty high failure rate, where the family didn't approve of the courtier, or whatever it was. But you don't know what your partner is going to be like 2 weeks later after you get married. And I have been, just to tell you, I've been extremely happy and satisfied with how you've been, for 20 plus years. And it's very hard for me to say no. So like you said, you weren't pressuring for an animal, and it's hard for me to say no to you. And mostly it's out of necessity, or we can't do that, or we shouldn't, if it's something that might upset the environmental apple cart. I'm the one usually that comes in and says, maybe not, and not that you're just like off the wall irresponsible, like, let's just do everything, but we discuss it and talk about it, and a lot of times it is me saying no. And so I don't like to say no. So when it's something that's simple, so just jump into the cat. I didn't, like you said, you weren't asking, you weren't pressuring, and it let me have that space to observe the kitten, and I do think that the kitten chose you. And at that moment in time, and I can call her Her name is Joya. I can call her and she doesn't come running for me, but if you call her, she just comes ripping across the room and she's totally excited that you're calling her. And it's amazing that a cat would know their name after a couple weeks, you know, because
Well, it was even a couple days. I mean, I did specifically
yeah.
work on training her, but yeah, just a couple days. And now she even doesn't come necessarily to her nickname, even though we've called her nickname a lot too.
Yeah.
But yeah, she definitely knows her name. It is fascinating. And just in the 2 weeks or almost 2 weeks, she's learned a lot.
Well, she'll be laying on my leg or alongside my leg if I'm sitting on the couch or if I'm on the computer or something. She'll lay and as soon as she hears your voice, her head goes up and she looks and she's, you know, she perks up. Like you come in the living room sometimes if I'm working, sitting there and she's just laying there and you just check on her. And if you don't say anything, she's fine. But if you say something, she wakes up and she looks and, you know, so a lot of times she doesn't get up because she's too tired. You can see her eyes go, they start closing again. So, but yeah, it can bring chaos. I wasn't sleeping very well, but I had a major health crisis. And so I've had it was in my abdomen. So I've had a lot of uncomfortability sleeping and just uncomfortability in general. And then your cat passed during that time and my cat started yowling at night during that time. And so I wake up immediately if anything's going on. I've got that kind of critical defense system going on, I think. It'd be nice to sleep through things, but I don't know what I'd like to sleep through, actually.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about that too, that this week marks the 1 year mark that you actually gave in to me taking you to the hospital. We were there for a couple days and you were released. Well, yeah, they let you out. And that's funny for its own reason. But it's amazing when, you know, I posted on Facebook that this time period, because you were really sick for a couple of weeks. You'd had an abscess. You basically had a massive infection in your abdomen.
Yeah, it's on another podcast. People can go back and listen.
Right. And so it's a year ago that this time, it was a 2 week period that you were, you know, on the couch, you were just in agony, really. And after that it was a Friday and I'm like, okay, if we should go in at this point, because it's like, if it's on the weekend, you know, it's you don't have as many options typically, right? And so but this is relating to relationships. You sent me a short the other day. You'll often send me shorts and reactions and stuff, and it was this couple getting married, and it was the recording of their vows, and they were the typical standard vows, you know, for rich or poor, sickness and health, to death do us part. And the woman couldn't say, you know, for richer, she could say for richer, but not for poor. And the pastor's like, we talked about this, remember? And she's like, yeah, we talked. And he's like, yeah, we talked about this a lot. And, you know, what was interesting though to me is that she had no problem saying in sickness and in health. But if you've been through a significant health challenge with someone, that is more difficult than
you're better being poor. It's better being poor than sick, for damn sure.
Because you can definitely go to being poor by being sick. It will exhaust you on levels that being poor.
Well, you can't work. First of all, if you're truly sick, you can't work. And I was on the couch for 4.5 months. I could not work, and I am a worker. I wasn't trying to get a break. That's for sure. I would have much rather been working than what happened to me. But
or go on a sabbatical.
And then it costs because we did all natural treatments other than my visit to the hospital, and that cost thousands of dollars for supplements and peptides and natural remedies. And I mean, we spent thousands of dollars on that kind of stuff. And then, you know, going to the hospital, you have your hospital bill, you have your medical bills and that type of thing. And that costs money. Plus you're not making money along the way. Now, thankfully I have a business, So I was making money along the way because I have employees and that kind of thing. But if you don't, I can see how people go bankrupt getting sick. You know, it was a challenge. It was even a challenge for us because you were still working and running your company. Thankfully, you do it from home, but it put a strain on what you were doing, and you took a lot of days off and took a lot of time. And thankfully, you have a team too, that really pulled the sled, and
Well, you can
kept
never
things
really
moving.
plan for it. That's the challenge, is like, a health crisis can happen. You can't schedule it in. And it was at a very challenging time for me as well in business. And so I guess what's the point here is this was something that this divorce attorney talked about as well, that
You brought up the clip about the woman couldn't say for poor.
right. Well, this divorce attorney mentioned also that the one divorce case that he had handled was this man who got into an accident and became quadriplegic. And fortunately, he was rather forgiving of his wife, who wanted the divorce, and who was basically like, I didn't sign up to be changing diapers, or, his diapers. He was formerly like a marathon runner or triathlete kind of person, and so obviously it's a stark difference, right? Stark contrast.
It can be a shock mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It can be a complete and utter shock to a person.
Well, that would literally change their life,
Mhm.
right? That would change their life from being, even going to the park, it would completely change their life. And so, this attorney, talks about, can you even imagine, or I might be mixing it up with some other talk, but, it is a consideration. I think it's a consideration that could scare you away, because that's one of the things I hear out in the quote red pill community. Will she take care of you when you're sick? And they're talking about a cold or a flu or something like that. And that's nothing
When you're hugging
compared
the
to,
porcelain, throwing up,
yeah.
is she gonna clean up your vomit, or hold your head? Yeah.
And there's a lot of, and maybe it's just what I've been listening to, but there's a lot of talk about, uh, should should a person get married? What is the solution that is
Addressing or
addressing?
taking care of. Yeah.
Right. And
I can name a few.
okay, go for it.
Serious commitment. For guys, there's a lot of talk nowadays about um, guys and their money. Um, I don't think most of these guys have enough money to worry about. Um, that's why they're talking about it. Uh, I would, no matter how much money I have or had when we got married, I wouldn't have had a prenup. I know my potential, and if you haven't had $1 million in the bank, then you don't really have enough money to worry about. It's when it's it's the process of who you are and how you go about things while you're married, while you're in a relationship, that sets up. And first of all, I've been married a couple other times, and I got out within a year. And there's no spousal compensation at a year. There's none of that kind of stuff. um, so I know there's a lot of nasty people out there, and there's nasty attorneys that tell people to do things, when they're getting a divorce, to get the other person in debt to them or get them arrested or that type of thing. But you owe it to yourself to understand how life works. You owe it to yourself to be the best that you can be in every situation that you're in. And you can't just throw your hands up and go, "Oh, I didn't know. I didn't. Oh, how could that happen? Oh, you've got to be prepared." And that's what life is. Life is a test of your preparedness. And and your capability of dealing with situations that come up, and doing better all the time, because as you grow, you have larger hurdles or bigger deals, or there's more family involved, right? As a couple gets together, if they grow a family and they have aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and cousins and parents, and there's more to deal with when you get into a relationship. So you should grow with yourself, the things that you do, and there you go. That's the philosophy of life.
Well, I could say too, I think that there could be a counter argument that a person who doesn't have $1 million in the bank may feel like they have more to lose.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. But you can't, making 35,000 a year, signing a prenup, it's, if you make 35,000 a year, your spouse is working. And some people making $1 million a year, their spouse is working. Some people making 10 million a year, their spouse is working. It just depends on the person. I don't think you're setting your marriage up properly by planning for your divorce. That's kind of my point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we specifically talked about that before we got married, and I especially, we didn't have much of anything at that point. At that point you're guessing what the future is going to be like. And
well, we both run businesses. If you're we always say plan for the worst, hope for the best. But if you're planning on failing, right? It's like having a backup plan, right? Well, what's your backup plan? Well, I don't want to back up, right? Now, having investments on the side, or having another commissioned situation, or having where you make money off commissions, or diversifying your structure in your business or your portfolio when you're investing, that's just smart. That's not technically a backup plan. That's not planning to fail. That's planning to succeed. And everybody should do that within their own capabilities, and then constantly be learning and planning for, we don't know if the reason you have insurance on your building is if a tornado comes and takes it away, right? You can rebuild it. That's not planning to fail, but you're not hoping that it happens, and you're not worried about it. And I think that people's worry gets the best of them. And right now, there's too many people taking too many options. So we talked about dating apps earlier, right? And there's, if your answer to everything is next, then you're not going to have a successful relationship. Your answer has to be, how do I talk to my significant other about this so that they understand, and so that, because I hear a lot of young guys nowadays talking, I'm the man, you got to listen to me, I'm making the money, I bring it in, Well, that's not going to work long term either. I mean, you don't want just a person next to you that just says yes, or just listens to everything you say, and doesn't have any cognizant thoughts of her own, because I think a woman like that is easier. It's going to be easier for another guy to sway her also.
You just keep her locked up in the house and can't see any other men, and then she can't be swayed.
It is about time for you to go back to your room.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing that little fire in your eye when I say stuff like that.
So
cool down.
That leads me to another question, though, because you've been very supportive of me and encouraging, like, not necessarily like, yeah, Tara, go out there and get a job and work somewhere else around, other guys and get hit on and stuff like that. But you have been very encouraging of my own personal development, starting up business and so forth. So, it seems it appears from the outside that it's not black and white to you. Like, either she's at home just cooking and cleaning, or she's out making her own way, in business or at a job.
Well, for how long? The first 15 years, the first 18? When did you start your business?
Well, I was trying to do,
5 years ago.
well, I think
Yeah.
as far as when it started taking off was more 7-8 years ago.
Well, serious time into it. Let's say 40 hours a week was probably 5-6 years ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've been married for 23 years. And before that business, you had a free run, right? You had 2 jobs when I met you, almost 3. You were doing something else part-time. And you had a great work ethic, and I thought it was wonderful. And I gave you an option to stay home. But I also said, if you're going to do that, you have to be improving yourself, right? Going to yoga, going to dance, doing whatever it is you want to go into the health club, whatever, right? You had to be improving yourself. And I did say even reading books and studying things, right? And you did very well, and you did that for a long time. And that wasn't to keep you at home, because when we met, you were contemplating going to college. You didn't know what you wanted to do. You thought, maybe I'll be a teacher, maybe you're interested in biology and that kind of stuff, and potentially a doctor, maybe, and but you opted not to do that. So if you were going to stay home, I didn't see a future. Let me say it this way. I didn't see a future for you in the workaday world, just doing what you were doing, right? I mean, you speak multiple languages. You could translate. You could be a translator or a, are you watching the kitty?
Yeah.
You could be a translator or a interpreter, that type of thing. And you did that, and you did a ESL position for a while, for a season or a year, at the school as English as a second language teacher. And you didn't even have a teaching degree. So you were capable of doing that kind of stuff. But
keep going. I'm going to pick her up.
I thought it would be a better option for you to experience staying home, doing the things you wanted to do, going to your classes and exploring and finding, what it is that you may have wanted to search for something. Because that's technically why people go to college, right? They're searching and trying to figure out what their life is going to be and what they're going to do for a living and that kind of stuff. Whoa, big bouncies. Well, there she is. What a distraction.
She's gonna go sleep on the, literally on the, what is that thing called? We plug in.
Oh, the hub.
Yeah.
Just 6 up.
No, we don't need to sleep on that electronic.
Oh, it's warm, I bet.
Could be. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah. Do you want to get adjusted here quick?
Yep. There we go. Okay. Just need to do that. There you go, BB.
Little fur buddy distractions.
Yeah.
So you were home and cooking, and we were doing lots of stuff. We traveled. We went to Brazil a couple times. We went to Mexico. We went to Europe. We went to Bournemouth, England. We were in Italy. We were living our lives. We're doing the things we were doing. And after a while, you were like, I think I want to go to school. I want to go to college and do some generals and stuff. And
I think we've told this story a couple of times before, so I'm going to cut to the chase of what my questions was. And it seems like, and again, it may just be what we're listening to, but it seems like there's so much black and white, kind of she's, like you just shared with me, a clip by Candace Owens, and she's, feminists really got it wrong. Who was thinking down the road and saying, yeah, this will really be a better situation for women to have to work outside the home and not spend time with their kids.
We're going to stick it to men. We're going to go get jobs and take our tops off on the internet.
Right. And sleep around, we're going to really stick it to those guys. And, even on PBD or Valuetainment, and sauces, like, yeah,
Yeah, you go,
like,
girl.
right. And so but then I think about like our history, and it wasn't black and white, and even though we're definitely proponents and supportive of families that the wife, the mom, wants to be home. And I mean, I can see a huge amount of value in that. And that, I mean, just for one, I think there's a lot to take care of in a household. And if you have one person that's home all or most of the time, when the other person is not working, i.e. home off of work, you have that time to spend together. I do think that there was some kind of psyop in a way where
The feminism, absolutely.
so where you have both people away from the home most of the day, and it's like, how do you get things done? I mean, we have a summer list of things to do. It's the end of September, and we've really haven't touched that summer to-do
Not
list.
scratched it.
Right. And so I just, as I listen to these things, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of good reason behind, and typically it's the woman, that the woman, the mom, is at home, whether she's a mom or not. I mean, there's still plenty to do even in our relationship. If I were, doing all the yard work, and
Yeah, taking care of a household is a big deal.
it's at least a part-time job, and especially if you have any land more than a postage stamp that most
A garden, chickens, all the different things. Yeah.
kitty babies.
Kitties. I just had to run and make sure my frittatas weren't burning.
Well, and it's just that too. It's cooking good meals, having good food. And I do think that there's a lot that our society, individuals are suffering health-wise, emotionally, and so forth, because we are trying to fit too much in, right? And I wonder how much of this, like World War II in particular, the Rosie the Riveter, and the connotation was, yes, women had to step up and work in the factories. And I think there was probably a certain aspect of, not all of them went back home and just to the life the way it was. I imagine that was an era also where they learned, oh, okay, I can bring home a significant amount of income, if I'm working. And
well, and I agree that women needed to be able to be more independent, and I'm totally fine with that. Obviously,
what is that independence though? Like, what specifically?
Well, it wouldn't be that a young lady would have a job that she could support herself with. She might have money that she could, do some things with, but it wasn't generally a wage that could support you. When I met you, like I said, you had 2.5 jobs, and you were still living at home with your parents, and you had a car that you had purchased on your own, and probably $500-600,
$1,200.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
$1,200. And it got you around town. It wasn't the best car in the world, obviously, but it got you around, and I was glad that you had some experience doing some things. It's tough when you meet young people. We've talked at colleges to entrepreneurial courses and stuff like that, and we have 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds that have never had a job, and that's a really terrible thing to do to a young person. I think young people should be out there learning how to deal with people, how to interact, how to, not coddling their feelings, keeping them sequestered in a system, that caters to their every whim or their every emotion. You got to get out there, and people got to just say, suck it up, buttercup, go do it or get out of here, and
So when you talk about independence though, I mean, it sounds like, what era are you talking about? Because what I'm formulating
still right now. I mean, women gotta, why are women doing OnlyFans? Because they can make a ton of money. They're being naked online, they're doing that type of stuff, but but they make a lot of money, and they go, well, how am I going to turn down $500,000 a month? And I get it. I understand that. And, but, it's going to be, I listened to this one thing in this, they had this Chinese lady on, and she said, in China, we have a term for women who are 35 and not married. And the term translates to left on the shelf. Like in the store, it's a product nobody wanted. And they, the American girls are getting all offended, and the guys are like, hey, yeah, well, I mean, if you've been on OnlyFans and you've been doing sex acts on the internet and doing all these things, who's gonna get with you? What quality man is gonna want to marry you? And that's something that they're not being told. They're just saying, the term is get your bag, and it's like a bag of money or a fancy purse, kind of has a couple of meanings. But
so you said my work ethic was really attractive to you, and I remember on the Love is Blind, one of the Love is Blind shows, there is this really cute couple, Bartiz and Nancy. And Nancy, cute little Mexicana, and
she had rental properties.
And she had rental properties. So she had previously been a professional in, I think she was a speech pathologist, something like that. And with a previous boyfriend had gotten into rental properties, and they were still business partners. And she and Bertiz seemed like a really great match. The chemistry hit it off, but what it looked like to me, he was relatively a new CPA and getting started in his career. And so, knew the income potential and of rental properties and such. And I think he was intimidated by her earning what she had already put together. She was a little bit older than him.
She was sharp too.
She's very sharp, but just like head over heels about him. Like I hear about guys who just like are like, oh, whether it's them or they're witnessing a woman just like adoring a guy, they obviously love that. And boy, she's beautiful doe brown eyes, and she's just like adoring him. But I think that he was intimidated by her what she was already doing, and I don't blame him for it. I think it's a pretty natural, it sounds like it's very natural. And what I'm getting at is, do you think there would have been a point for you where my work ethic actually might have been intimidating
to
you?
No. My work ethic kills your work ethic.
Well, my work ethic
makes it look like you sleep all day.
No, we're not even in the same weight class as far as work ethic.
That's right. No, I was not intimidated by your work ethic at all.
Not whether you were, but
if I had met you and you were making $150,000 a year or $200,000 a year, I would not have been intimidated. Not at all. I had the same attitude. I just told you I was talking to a guy the other day, and he has a girlfriend who has a business. I'm not going to say what it is, because if they watch this, they're going to know what it is. He'll know that I'm talking about him, but I don't want her to know that I'm talking about him. And all I told him was, she has this business, it's running. You do whatever you can to help her, and the business could support both of you. And he's like, well, I got all these ideas. And I said, dude, she's been doing this for 2 years. You guys just met. You do not put your sticky, greedy, little grubby fingers into her business. You help. You say, what can I do? And she'll say, you could carry that over here, and you go do it. And you say, now what? And she'll be like, oh, wow, he did that. And then you say, give me 5 things to do. And then you do them perfectly. You do them timely. You make sure that you're assisting her, you're helping her in what she's doing. You make her work less. She'll give you more responsibility. She'll say, a woman will do this. She'll say, I think we should be 50-50 partners. And you need to say, nope, there needs to be a boss. You run this business, you do it. I can be 49, but I probably should only get 15% right now because I've only been doing this with you for 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. You be overly generous in the opposite way. You don't take, you've got to show your value. You've got to show that you're trustworthy. You got to show that you're capable, and you're not just out for the cash. You're there for her.
So,
And so I would have never been intimidated by a woman that makes more money than me.
so I'm going to use these terms because people are more familiar, but quote, the red pill community would say, you can't have a good relationship if the woman is literally your boss, right? If you have a business, you come into her business literally and figuratively, right? And it's like it was hers to begin with, and she's, can you really have a good
Well,
relationship?
part of this is probably a conversation we should have off camera before we do it on camera. But to me, the bottom line to a guy, it doesn't matter who's, there's all these measurements of a man, right? How much money does he make? How good looking is he? How big is his thing? How, all these different things, right? What it comes down to is who can kill who. And sorry to say that out loud, right? But that's what it comes down to.
Among guys?
Among anybody.
Among anybody, okay.
Among anybody. We're still humans on this planet that are trying to achieve physical, emotional, spiritual enlightenment. And until we do that, until we have all three in a hierarchical order properly aligned, it's still going to come down to who can take from who and who can kill who. And so there's always an ultimate level. Well, you've heard Jordan Peterson talk about it. When guys get together, there's always an element of violence. Violence can erupt at any moment.
The potential, I think, is more.
There's potential.
Yeah.
Well, and it can erupt at any moment. If a guy says the wrong thing, if a guy does the wrong thing, that's why guys don't, and they know. I mean, and you can go online and say, violence erupted between friends. There's probably 1 million plus videos, 6 guys sitting around, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, fists are flying. People are being thrown over, booths and chairs are going everywhere. And it's like, what just happened, And the wrong thing got said at the wrong time. The person did the wrong thing. There was an insult thrown, and some insults, the only response is, now this is going to sound terrible because it's just words, sticks and stones could break my bones. But there are some insults, and you never know who it is with a guy. That one insult, the next response is instantaneous violence, and you don't know. So you have to be cautious as a man. But getting back to a woman, if you were worth $10 billion and I met you and I was just making $35,000 a year, being who I am, my personality, I would be doing that because of multiple reasons, and I would not be intimidated. It's not in my nature to be intimidated, right? I mean, I could be flat out scared of something, but it's not in my nature to be intimidated. It's in my nature to either accommodate a situation or control a situation or try and find a balance between those two things.
Yeah, I can see how in this type of scenario, the quote, the red pill community is like, that can exist. Most men, I think,
insecure men. It's insecurity. It's
And as far as like the threat situation, I can see how, the certain, how this legal system really, it sounds like, of course, divorce is brutal no matter what, but it's like that you're having someone else duke it out for you, right? You're paying hopefully someone good, who's doing a good job, but that is a leveling of the playing field, so to speak. But then it's not level if you don't have the resources to pay a good attorney. And then of course this attorney brings that up a number of times. Like it's, she's like, I knew my client was guilty, but she went with a public, attorney. And so, yeah, anyways, I'm kind of going off on a mental tangent.
When I met you, I tried to set you up with 2 other guys because I knew you were going to make a good wife to somebody. I wasn't after you. That's I was in a position as a teacher, a martial arts instructor, that I couldn't date my students. And so that, you know, the guys that are talking red pill. So when a guy says red pill, he's letting you know his ethics, right? It's like when somebody says, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. In general, you know the talking points, you know the ethics that make up that position.
Right.
I don't do that. I don't identify. And when I met you, I met you for who you were. I saw what you did. I saw your work ethic. I saw all the things. You know, you're obviously a good-looking young lady, and I told other guys, you know, this is one you should date. This is one you should, you know, she's going to make a good wife to somebody. Turns out it was me. But I wasn't like, oh, here's one. And I was single when you came into my school. It wasn't like, oh, I got to get this one, you know. And that's the way it sounds like to me, these red pillars, you know, these guys out there, they preach that women should be chaste and keep their purity, but they're out with all these women. They're out, you know, they would probably take the virginity of 10 women a week if they could. And they're preaching nobody's going to want to be with you if you're a hoe, if you're made for the streets, blah, blah, blah. All these pop terms, you know, that make them sound like they know what they're talking about, but they don't. They're doing the opposite of what they're saying. You know, a guy doesn't need to have 20 conquests under his belt to be a good man or a knowledgeable man. I mean, we have the internet nowadays, you know. You know, you can look up sex, you can look up sexual techniques, you can look up processes in the body, you can, you know, and we all went through school. So it's not like you have to be, you know, they're treating relationships for guys like somebody who's been who's a championship fighter, or somebody that just won the World Cup in tennis, and they got to have 10 years of experience under their belt in order to get to this pinnacle, right? That's not what marriage is. Marriage is two people getting together, learning about each other, growing together, and trying to build something together. That's what marriage is. And if you're successful, if you got 20 plus years under your belt, to me, I think that's success. The mark of success is the next year, the next year, the next year, and the next day sometimes, right? We know, you know, we've been together for a long time. Sometimes it's getting through a day and getting to the next day. It's smiling, saying, I love you, going to sleep, waking up in the morning and going, boy, that was a rough day yesterday, you know? And then you're all the better for it, you know. So
I think that's a great ending point.
Woo!
Until tomorrow.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy.